So this is the after of doing the refret on this ESP Strat. This guitar, of course, you know, we did tung oil instead of finish, and you can see that the tung oil has kind of a bit of a different sheen. It almost has a sheen that's got some like wood grain texture to it, and that's obviously because it's oil on wood. But it does have a nice shine to it. So, you know, if you are afraid of like kind of losing the luster on a neck, you know, it's not necessarily something that you need to be worried about with this. Now, this oil does penetrate a pretty far distance into this wood, and so this is going to be able to be played on for quite some time before this layer of tung oil is gone through with wear, you know, and by that point it'll probably be ready for another refret, and you know, possibly this will be an option for it again. This is a single piece neck, and so we don't have a fretboard that we're going to go through on this guitar. You know, theoretically this thing could go, you know, pretty thin. All that said, though, I mean, you know, got to consider this height down here. Now, you can shim a neck up here if you start getting kind of thin, but, you know, just kind of pointing that out, that this here is oftentimes kind of an indicator of, like, how much you can really work with a neck before things start getting a little silly down here at the body joint. But, yeah, this ended up coming out really well. This is probably, I don't know, I've done this a handful of times. Usually I'll try to turn down maple fretboard fret jobs just because I don't have a spray booth here, and I know that a lot of people want that you know, finish redone on the neck when the fret job is done, and I just don't have the setup here at the shop to do it. You know, my shop has been in a number of different locations over the years. At points I've had better or worse situations as far as doing finish work. Currently I'm in, you know, a very small space, and I just don't have a separate room for doing any kind of, like, you know, fine work with sprays and stuff like that that's going to be dust free, and so that's been a real problem that I've dealt with at this location. But this tung oil is kind of nice because if this does get contaminated with dust, you just can kind of go over it and pull that stuff out with a rag. At the very most, you might need a little bit of steel wool and to kind of rebrush a coat on there. Now, I will say that we dealt with some instability in this neck, and so if you are planning on doing a tung oil finish on your fretboard like this, it's probably worth you know, getting the tung oil done and letting it sit for a few weeks while that tung oil really has a chance to cure. Because this neck here, what was happening with it was when we tried doing the setup too early on it, it seemed like the tung oil actually kind of caused the fretboard to expand because we lost neck relief and we lost string height. And so some things kind of drifted a little bit. This is the guitar after it's had a chance to kind of sit, and I've kind of subjected this to some different things to kind of get it to move. So I've left it, you know, with a brace under here to kind of see if I could get the neck to bend forward. I've tried doing it the opposite way to see if I could get it to bend back, and I've kind of stored it on its side for a couple of days to see if the neck would move. And we did get a little bit of movement out of it, but not much. And so just went in there and kind of touched up the truss rod, and, you know, everything is all hunky-dory now. Yeah, that's just something to, you know, you might consider if you're planning on going this route, is that this oil does kind of have a funny cure process. It does produce heat. And you know, as we saw with this guitar, it may also cause wood to expand a little bit, which, you know, if it does that, obviously it's not going to do great things for your action. So, you know, just be aware of that, and be sure that you have the time allotted, you know, for the instrument to kind of sit, and for the neck to cure in the, you know, for the amount of time that it's going to need. And what I would recommend personally is I would say leave it for at least a couple of weeks, if not a little longer than that. This oil takes a long time to cure, but it is very strong once it is cured, and it's a really great finish for, you know, shine, for luster. It's easily repairable. Like if this gets gouged, we can always just go in and we can use a Q-tip to rub a little bit more oil in there. It's just a fantastic oil. The only drawback, I think, to this oil is just that it is a sealing oil. So like once this stuff is on there, it's not really going to be all that possible to get finish to stick to this. This is kind of like a one-way trip. Like once you've decided to do the tung oil thing, that's it for that guitar. Like that's going to be a tung oil finish. And that's kind of the way that tung oil works generally when you use it. It's the way that most oil finishes work, to be honest. It's not generally a good idea to apply an oil finish to something and then expect a clear coat to stick to it. Generally speaking, most paints, most, things with, that kind of quality to it, want to have something to stick to that likes to be stuck to. And as you might see in your kitchen with your cast iron skillet, oil does not like to have things adhere to it. So, just keep that in mind as well. Anyway, this has been Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington. Really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I've got a lot more like this on my channel. If you found this entertaining or informative, you can also drop me a tip down in my Ko-Fi, which is linked in the description of the video, or in my Patreon, which is also greatly appreciated because the Patreon allows me to actually budget a little bit off of. Also down in the description, you will find a link to my Reverb page where I sell some cool stuff. And a link to my website where you can find my contact information, my pricing info for repair work, and also a page that I wrote on caring for stringed instruments. And if you're here watching this video, I bet you have some stringed instruments that you do care for. Also new to my website is a page that I wrote on basically everything you could possibly want to know about frets, like this job here. It's very, very long. It took me a long time to write it, and you can access that by clicking on any of the hyperlinked material in my price page under fretwork. So if you go down to that little area that says fretwork and you click on any of those things that are clickable, it'll take you right to that page and you can read all about it. So, please enjoy that, and any feedback is also welcome on it. Anyway, this has been Drew Jones of Drew's Guitar Shop in Seattle, Washington. Thanks for watching.